Welcome everybody to today's LYL session. Today we got a great guest, Nimisha. She's going to be talking to us about healthy alternatives, and specifically if you're into the junk food bitches and chocolate and soda, we're going to talk about some great alternative ways to kind of get those sugar blues out of your life. So by all means, I'm gonna pass it over to Nimisha, and she's gonna take it away.
Thank you so much, Alex. My name is Nimisha Gandhi. I am a functional and Ayurvedic nutritionist. I have a virtual practice out of San Francisco. That means I can work with people all over as a personal nutritionist. And my specialty really is actually working with sustainable food habits. So, I'm not into weight loss for the sake of weight loss and then, do everything you can possibly do to weight loss, but what are sustainable ways? And today we're talking about sugar, which is at the crux of a lot of health issues. We all, we hear it all the time in the news that sugar is bad for you, sugar is evil, and all these things. And I think the more we demonize foods, the harder, sometimes the more we want it, but then the guilt, right? Then the guilt really builds up every time we do have the sugary foods, and that can have quite a detrimental effect on our bodies and our minds and our ability to quit sugar. What's interesting is that I used to work in clinical research before, and I actually used to work in addiction. So we were studying methamphetamine, cocaine addictions on alternative drugs to help people get off of these drugs. And so we had we were working with humans, not lab rats or anything. And it's so interesting from that work is because sugar is highly addictive food. And so when I was working with this population, the number one thing they wanted to eat was sugar. And while they're even getting off of these drugs, they would replace the drugs with sugar because it lit up their centers in their brain, the reward centers. And so it's fascinating. And I really hate how we've made sugar a thing about willpower. Oh, you know how those people are like, oh yeah, sugar, and it's like, okay, like great for, but it's all about willpower. And willpower food is actually a myth, especially in today's society, because most of our food is the food that contain these sugars are highly addictive are actually made in what's called these food universities. And so food universities are owned by companies like Coca-Cola, Nestle, General Mills, like Kellogg's. Think of the big brands that you see in the grocery store. And they actually have, think about it like a Princeton type of facility, a college campus where they have scientists working every day to formulate and create foods that are delicious, good looking, but highly addictive. So you will keep going back for it. And so this is a real thing. And so it's not about a willpower, it's someone manipulating us to eat these foods. And then they're selling it. And then they're in places, right? Like, why is there a Coca-Cola vending machine in the ER unit? It makes no sense. Or in schools, right? In schools where kids should be eating nutritious food that's going to aid their learning and their social emotional behavior, yet these vending machines are there because these are the things that have big money and have infiltrated our system, and they pay for a lot of things. If you're a school that's short on funding and Coca-Cola comes in and say, hey, we're going to fund this program, all you have to do is keep a machine here, You're pretty desperate for those dollars so the kids can get books, you know. So it's a cycle, and I really want to start off this conversation by saying that it's not your fault if you're addicted to sugar. It's not your fault if you can't easily quit sugar. It honestly has to be like a 12-step program, sometimes quitting sugar. It has to be a group community effort as well. So, you know, I just wanted to say all that before we get into it, because I don't want to scare you with like with stats and facts, and then you feel overwhelmed and like, oh, I can't do this. So let me do a screen. Alex, can you enable my screen sharing? Okay, there we go. So sugar blues. Does anyone know why we call it sugar blues?
You get sad because you're not eating sugar?
Maybe.
Can you repeat that again?
You get
I
sad.
missed
You get sad because you're not eating sugar?
You get sad because you're not eating sugar. That's true. But I think the word sugar blues came from is because one of the, there's so many meanings to sugar blues. The one that I kind of pertain to is that actually eating too much sugar can leave you feeling anxious and depressed. So it's just the health effect of the sugar blues. You know how like you eat it and then you feel good, but then a lot of times like you come down, you come crashing, you know, like kind of like a caffeine crash, and it can leave you feeling really down and depressed. So I think that's where the term sugar blues comes from. But there might be other origins of the term. It could be quite the opposite. It could be that you're feeling sad or blue because you're not consuming sugar. It's a fun quote to start off with. One can hardly do anything productive when one knows there's cake in the fridge. I mean, how true is this? How true? I cannot. If there is cake in my fridge, that is what I'm going to be thinking about all of the time, even after I have a bite of that cake. I as much as I love eating healthy food, if there is cake around, that is one thing I cannot resist. Oh, my beautiful photos have not loaded here. I had a photo of assortment of fruits and then like some not so healthy food, but types of sugar. I'm not going to get into what glucose and fructose and sucrose is. That doesn't matter. What really matters is that, as a rule, good sugars that are nutritious and that actually, you know, do good for your body are found in healthy whole foods, while the quote unquote bad sugars are commonly found in highly refined processed foods. So I don't normally like labeling good and bad foods, but I think for today's presentation, it's to make a clear distinction on the different types of sugar. So you have sugars that are naturally found in foods, and then you have added sugars that have been made. You could even have coconut sugar, right? Made from a healthy plant, healthy vegetable. And now you see coconut sugar everywhere as an alternative, but that's still an concentrated added sugar versus sugar that you would just find in blueberries or potatoes or sweet potatoes, all the fruits, right? Or even sugars found in whole grains, like even whole wheat, in quinoa, in barley, buckwheat. All of those foods, beans, all those foods have some type of sugar, but those I kind of, unless you're diabetic or have a serious metabolic condition where any type of sugar will increase your insulin levels and put you at a health risk, those are considered negligible sugars when they're found in food, real healthy whole foods. Well, bad sugars are anything that has been added. You could make a homemade cake using coconut sugar or monk fruit, and I'm going to get into these different types of sugars that you find. that is still added sugar. And but the worst kinds they're found in highly refined processed foods like donuts, brownies, anything deep fried, ice cream. Those are usually the ones that lead to health issues and health problems. So refined sugars are also extremely easy to eat in excess. Like if there is a bag of cookies or a plate of cookies, it's kind of easy to eat 3, 4, 5, 10 of those cookies. I think someone's unmuted. Versus like having 10 slices of apple. By the time you probably get to the 5th or 6th slice of apple, you feel pretty satisfied. It's kind of hard to overeat apples. And also, a lot of times in healthy whole foods, it takes a lot of work to eat sugary foods, right? Like a crunchy apple, you're biting down on it, you're chewing it, your jaw is working, your tongue is working, versus like, let's say, a milkshake or a cookie that kind of just melts in your mouth and you don't have to do much chewing or processing. So it just goes straight into your body. And thus it's easier to just, you're almost like, and I am so guilty of this too. Like before you even finish that one bite completely, you're stuffing your mouth with another bite of cookie, versus it's kind of hard to stuff your mouth with an apple, kind of fills up your mouth. And so that is something, that is a distinction I want you to keep in mind when we're talking about good sugars versus bad sugars. I think it's also important to read nutrition label. So generally, the other rule is if it has a required nutrition label, it probably has an added sugar, or it's not a healthy whole food. It could be a manufactured food, processed food. So, an apple, oranges, blueberries, they don't generally come with nutrition labels. So I don't worry about that. But a box of cookies, a bag of chips do. I typically do not look at anything on the nutrition label. I don't think anything is really, really important on the nutrition label except for the trans fats and the sugars. Because if I'm eating a bag of chips or something, I'm consciously eating something that is high in fat, it's not a very nutritious food, so I'm not going to get much out of it. But I do want to be cautious of the sugars and the trans fat. Trans fats, those are made of hydrogenated oils, things that are usually deep fried, or just, canola oil. All of those are trans fats, and that's can cause heart disease and obesity, diabetes, all of that. And then the sugars, like you just don't want a lot of sugar in your food. So even like if you're looking at a protein bar, and a protein bar has 20 grams of sugar, but only 10 grams of protein, that's not a very healthy protein bar. That's just a candy bar with a fancy packaging. So I'm going to teach you how to read an ingredient nutrition labels, so you know how to look at for these things. I don't also really look at this. I look at actually what's in the ingredients, because this could be quite deceptive. Because if it's a nutritious food like a mango, the sugars are going to be really high, but it's a mango, or a pineapple. And so, and it's going to have a good amount of fiber too, but it's deceptive. And then if you compare just sugar of a mango versus maybe a tiny Chips Ahoy, the mango might actually have more sugar than the Chips Ahoy, but the mango also has fiber, it has minerals, it has a little bit of protein, it has good healthy fat, it has all this good things that's going to satisfy your body, feed your brain, feed your gut, versus a Chips Ahoy, it might have a lower amount of sugar, but it also doesn't have the vitamins and the minerals and the antioxidants that's going to nourish your body. So, you can't, it's like, again, comparing apples to oranges, you can't really just rely on this nutrition facts. You have to look at the nutrition label. Okay, so when you're looking at nutrition labels and packaged foods, look out for the traps in marketing terms and the different symbols. There's this idea of Anthony, did you have a question or you're unmuted? Okay, I'm going to continue. So greenwashing. So this we see on a lot of like beauty products, a lot of things where they'll say like organic and they'll say healthy or toxic free, but then you read the ingredients and it actually has quite a bit of toxins or whatever. That's called greenwashing. They do that a lot during in October during breast cancer awareness month, like KFC putting the breast cancer symbol on their buckets, but it's KFC and their food is probably contributing to cancer, and so that's called greenwashing. That happens a lot. I mean, the number one place that actually happens to are food products, and so we want to be very cautious of these fancy marketing terms because does it really mean anything? And the serving size is also important. You know, if you see something that has like, oh, that only has 2 grams of sugar, and you're thinking it's going to be like a little the entire packet or something, because that seems like a normal serving size, but then you look at it and it's like really only like one tiny cookie or like 5 chips. So we got to be cautious of that. That serving size, I think, really matters when we're eating bowls of cereals. Ingredient labels. So ingredients are listed from highest to lowest. So if you see sugar as listed as like the top 3 to 4 ingredients, then it's a pretty high amount of sugar in that food. Hidden names for additives and sugars. So there are probably over 100 names for sugars, and they do that because so you'll have I'll go into a food label and then you'll see what I'm talking about. So to identify sugar and look for words that end with "ose," like sucralose, glucose, and as well as phrases that contain syrup or malt, that's a sugar. So let's look at Honey Nut Cheerios. It's the #1 cereal in America, very delicious. But it has a lot going on in this nutrition label. It says first ingredient, whole grain oats. So they figured out people really are looking at ingredient labels, so they put this whole grain oats. Simply made, gluten-free. That could be important, especially if you're celiac. Naturally flavored Honey Nut Cheerios made with real honey. Can help lower cholesterol as part of a healthy diet. That's a very interesting, what does that mean? And then they have a little asterisk in here and barely legible right here. It says 3 grams of soluble fiber daily from whole grain foods like Honey Nut Cheerio cereal. And it goes on and on trying to justify the statement, because actually Honey Nut Cheerios doesn't really help you lower cholesterol. It's just, it's the idea of it. So there's a lot of fancy marketing, and when you first read it, like, look at that, it's like a heart-shaped cereal bowl. It really thinks that you're doing good. There's a shiny honey here. And then you start reading the nutrition label and you find out, does it really add up? And so you look at here, they have the nutrition facts. The first thing I'm going to look at is their total sugars. It's 12 grams of sugar. That's already higher than the recommended amount of sugar per day, or close to the high recommended amount. For children, children should only have 7 to 11 grams of sugar per day. So this would be your total amount for the day. It has very little protein compared to sugar, and then it doesn't have much other nutritive value. It has a lot of added vitamins and minerals, but we have found that foods that have been fortified with vitamins and minerals are not as well absorbed in the body, and thus that is why we still have all these nutritional deficiencies. Otherwise, we wouldn't have nutritional deficiencies because most food in America has been fortified. Whole grain oats, #1 ingredient. That's great. Oats are a very healthy part of diet. But I want to be careful, because when you look at oats in its natural form versus oats in a cereal, I mean, this oats has been ground up, made into like a powdery flour. And so it's already lost a lot of the fiber and the health value of that. When you take like a whole grain, when you take wheat and you turn it into all-purpose flour, it's lost all nutritional value. And that is basically a sugar food, because it just goes straight to your system. So that I already consider in the cereal form a sugar. Then it has just plain sugar, probably cane sugar. Then it has oat bran, so they had to add in a little bit of fiber in back, because they pulverize the oats, right? Cornstarch, that's probably just a binder here. Then it has honey. Then it has brown sugar syrup, and then it has a preservative, rice bran oil. And it just, so already in this tiny amount of 1 cup, it has like 3 or 4 different sugars. It doesn't even have real almonds. It just has natural almond flavor. So it's very deceptive. And I think these are the things we need to look out for and avoid when we're reaching for foods. And now let's say Honey Nut Cheerios is going to be your pleasure food. That is the food you're going to have once a week, and it's not for breakfast. And I wouldn't bother reading the nutrition label unless you had a health need. But I'm a big believer that we should not start our breakfast with these big bowls of cereal, because that keeps us then craving more and more sugar throughout the day. And I'll get into healthier alternatives for breakfast. So recommendations from the American Heart Association: American adults consume an average of 77 grams of sugar per day. And that's a lot. And the recommended amount for men or women, I don't think there's a difference between men and women. I really think we should be, I think that's also another outdated. I think we should be looking at height and body weight and muscle mass instead of gender here, because when this was made, and a lot of health models still go out as like men are bigger than women, but we know that some women can be bigger than men. Some children can be bigger than some women, so we got to look at more height and body weight composition when we're looking at these recommendations. So about 6 to 9 teaspoons for adults, let's say, per day, yet, or 25 to 36 grams, but we're consuming nearly triple the amount in a day. And you could see it easily adds up. If you have a bagel for breakfast, that bagel is just refined flour. It's going to have a lot of sugar. Then you have your cup of coffee or your latte. Then, you have a bowl of pasta for lunch, and then maybe a little sweet treat to get you going. If you get hungry, you might have a protein bar, and all of that just adds up, right? So we have to be really conscious. Like maybe if we started our breakfast instead of with a bowl of cereal or a bagel with a couple of eggs and vegetables and some real food, there's hardly any sugar in that meal. And then for our little mid-morning snack, an avocado or a handful of nuts, again, there's very little sugar in there. Maybe adding a couple of raisins to sweeten up. And then lunch could be, a bowl, like a chicken salad, or like a soup with a high amount of protein. Again, that will have very little sugar. So we got to really switch the type of foods we're eating daily, because we don't think of a pasta as sugar. We don't think about, a bagel as sugar foods, but that's what it really is. And then, pasta itself is a refined flour, and it basically really will make your insulin go, it will make your insulin spike and then make it drop, and kind of have a really negative effect on your body. And then the pasta sauce usually has a lot of sugar, probably like 5 to 7 grams of sugar just in a cup of pasta sauce. So something to be wary about. Or ketchup, or the sauces. I think it's all these hidden places that sugar gets to us. The World Health Organization actually has a lower threshold for adults, only 7 teaspoons of sugar a day. I think I honed in this part about sugar and sugar labels, and we get into artificial sweeteners and sugar substitutes, because people often think artificial sweeteners are okay, since they don't really impact your blood glucose or they don't have any calories. But many studies have shown that in a way they are much worse than just regular cane sugar. So studies have shown that artificial sweeteners may enhance sugar cravings and stimulate your appetite. So even though that food may have, let's say diet soda, may have not done anything to your blood sugar, but now you're still craving sugar. So you might go reach for more food and end up eating more food, more calories in a day than you typically would not have. And your body is not satisfied, right? So our bodies really want vitamins and minerals, and think of our body as like a bank reserve of vitamins and minerals and nutrients. And we need these vitamins and minerals and nutrients to function every day. And if we are not consuming these vitamins and minerals through food, we're going to go into a deficit. And if we go into a deficit, our body is going to crave more food. So let's say our body needs magnesium, or our body needs vitamin C. Vitamin C, magnesium-rich foods can come from, like, let's say sweet potatoes. It can come from apples. And so those are sweet foods. So you get this sweet craving, but you naturally reach for a brownie or a cookie, which is devoid of all those nutrients, but that's what you think is your body's craving, when your body is just craving real food. So this is how you can keep stimulating your appetite, and by eating the wrong things and not putting anything in your bank reserves, you kind of, it's harmful for your health. So diet soda consumption was associated with a 36% greater risk of metabolic syndrome and 67% higher risk of type 2 diabetes. So, honestly, if you're going to have that diet soda, maybe have like a quarter cup of the real thing instead of having a 20-ounce bottle. And that's portion size is another issue, right? Like you go through fast food driveway or get a, soda, and now these are like 24 ounces, 26 ounces of cups, and that's just a ridiculous amount of liquid sugar that you are just consuming, and it's bad, and versus maybe if you did have it, like just sticking to a half a cup, a quarter cup, until you can just cut it out of your diet. I really, there's so many people who have just gone so healthy by just cutting out the liquid sugar from diet soda, from sodas, drinks, beverages. And a better way is to cut out the sugar altogether instead of using artificial sweeteners, or reduce it in a recipe. Again, I don't believe in going cold turkey. It does not work. This is where all my clinical research experience comes out, but we can work by reducing it. And it may not taste as good to you in the beginning, but the less sugar you have, the more sensitive your tongue becomes to sugar. So then if you were to have a regular brownie after not having anything sweet, that brownie is going to taste so sweet to you, and you're not going to actually want more of it. So again, when it comes to artificial sweeteners and sugar substitutes, because there are like a ton out there, there's a nutritive kind that these provide calories and can affect your blood sugar, and the non-nutritive that these provide little to no calories and may, this is a questionable, not raise your blood sugar. The best way to know is that if you are serious about how your glucose levels and things, you could actually get a continuous glucose monitoring system. This is the best thing to do if you're diabetic or pre-diabetic, and you can see the effect of food having on your body. But the problem, non-nutritive, these are your Splendas and NutraSweets and all that, they can be several hundred to several thousand times sweeter than your sucrose, than your cane sugar, your table sugar. So again, then you're on this like vicious cycle of continuously craving sugar and no other flavors. And artificial sweeteners can alter your brain's response to sweetness and affect your ability to feel satisfied when you eat sweet tasting food or drink, and putting you at risk for consuming too much of it. And again, metabolic syndrome and all that. Just because I used to work in addiction research. So this right here is a sugar molecule, and this here is a cocaine molecule. They don't look very much the same. A lot of people like to say, oh yeah, sugar and cocaine are just like one carbon away from each other. The molecule, you know, I just wanted to do a little myth busting. The molecules don't really look like each other, but it does have a similar effect. Consuming sugar produces effects similar to that of cocaine, altering mood, possibly through its ability to induce reward and pleasure, leading to seeking out more sugar. And they've done a lot of rodent studies where even some of the rats and the mice will crave sugar even over cocaine. So it's interesting. I don't know if we can 100%, you know, correlate that to humans, but again, emphasizing this is very addictive. So it's very hard to quit. It's very hard to stop seeking it out, especially when we're emotional or going, you know, we use sugar. I think, you know, again, sugar blues. We use sugar when we're sad, and we use sugar when we're happy and celebrating, as you know, but we rarely use like spicy food or bitter foods. Like, you know, no one says like, oh, it's my birthday, I'm gonna eat kale to celebrate. So it, you know, it's biologically wired in us too. So there are different types of sugar substitutes, and I'm happy to answer questions about this towards the end. I like to call sugar substitutes empty pleasures, because that's all they really are. So you have your Splenda, you have your Sweet and Low, you have your aspartame, which the sucralose, Splenda and Sweet and Low, they've been around for a long time, but they do for a lot, you know, the jury really is out. Like some people, you know, some people use Splenda in everything, their baked goods and everything, yet they still suffer from diabetes, obesity, heart disease, you know? So, you know, I don't know how good the Splenda really is doing. And just because you have a cake made with Splenda instead of real sugar doesn't make that cake healthy. Just because you add, you know, 2 packets of Splenda into your coffee doesn't make that coffee healthier. Coffee can be healthy, but you know, adding that sugar was just going to set you up for more cravings and put your body in metabolic disarray. Same thing with Sweet and Low. This one, a lot of people get migraines from the aspartame substitutes, and a lot of health issues. It's really you know, stevia. Stevia is actually a lot better. It is plant derived, not really derived from these factories. So Splenda was actually a laboratory mistake. They were trying to like build, I think they were trying to create rodent killers or some kind of pesticide, and they made a mistake, and then it turned out that they created this really sweet product, and then they started selling it as a sugar substitute instead. So if you read the stories of how some of these sugars came about, you'd be really shocked. And so stevia is a little bit better, but it can affect your blood. It may or may not affect your blood sugar. Stevia is also very, very, very sweet, like, you know, 100 times sweeter than regular sugar. So again, it can set you up for more cravings. Sugar alcohols, they are derived again from carbohydrates and can affect your blood sugar levels. Monk fruit is one that we see a lot now. It's like the new trendy alternative sugar. It comes from a very specific fruit from southern China, I believe. And it actually is very nutritious. It has a lot of vitamins and minerals. Same with coconut sugar, it has a lot of vitamins and minerals, and it is lower on the glycemic index. So I prefer people to use monk fruit sugar or coconut sugar or even date sugar over cane sugar. But also just knowing the added sugar is still going to impact your blood sugar. And just because it's coconut sugar doesn't give you a hall pass to like eat the entire cake or cupcake. I'm not really sure what this one is called. I think it's called Ace One or Ace K1 as a shortened, and it's found in Mountain Dew and Coca-Cola. I'm not really sure what the science behind that is, but again, if it's a sugar substitute in diet soda, I would say quit diet soda. So the impact of just sugar, regardless if it's cane sugar or artificial sugar, what it does is it messes up your gut microbiome. And if you've been to my previous webinars here, I've talked a lot about the gut microbiome just to help you remember the gut microbiome is all these amazing living species in your gut that actually helps your immune system, helps your mood, your brain health, your heart health, your hormone health. We need these guys in our body to live our best lives, let's just say. But they can be easily disturbed. So we need to be feeding it. They basically live off of the nutrients we feed our bodies, and the nutrients they're really looking for is like that high fiber that's coming from fruits and vegetables and starchy foods. And so what high sugar diets do is cause it dysbiosis, meaning alters the bacteria and even kills off species, because every time we reach for, let's say, a cookie, we're not reaching for the blueberries, right? And so we're depriving our body of these nutrients. And high sugar diets can actually increase yeast and candida, and they can overgrow in our body, right? And if they overgrow in our body, that's going to crowd it out. And when we have, people who have yeast problems, they'll have yeast infections, bad breath, stomach issues, fertility issues. There's so many issues that come with when we have a dysbiosis. And dysbiosis has been linked to pathologies such as heart disease, hypertension, chronic kidney disease, obesity. I think someone's unmuted and I can hear the ambulance going. So again, some of the things that have been linked to high sugar diets is cardiovascular diabetes, obesity, cognitive decline. Children really have a hard time learning and remembering things at school, remembering what they just learned, but they also have a lot more aggressive behavior when they have a high sugar diet. It's been, jury's out, but I do believe that it can worsen like ADHD, dyslexia also. It can worsen symptoms of autism as well. So we really want to pay attention to our meals and how it's impacting our brain health, our whole entire health. And research shows that by changing your lifestyle, you can have a more powerful intervention to prevent metabolic syndrome than any medication. So again, just focus on one thing. I don't want you to go home and okay, I'm quitting cold turkey. Just choose one thing. If having a little cookie every single day is part of your daily routine, replace that with a cup of blueberries, replace that with maybe a 70-75% dark chocolate. The darker the chocolate, the less sugar it has. And see how those changes, just that one change is going to impact you overall. And then if your diet consists of other baked goods throughout the day, how can you start replacing that with whole foods? Because America's vices, this is the American population in general. The number one most popular foods in America are hamburgers, then it's potato chips, and then baked donuts and baked goods and ice cream. Nowhere on this list are our berries and vegetables. Like these are not the foods that we're eating on a daily basis, where that's what we should be eating on a daily basis, you know, reversing the ratio of how much we eat of these foods versus how much of the whole foods we eat. Because all of these foods turn into fat and sugar in your body and causes heart health issues overall. And this old way, this pyramid, this old way of thinking about food, where this bottom was like all whole grains, we found that this doesn't really work. And this also can cause a lot of heart issues and health disease, because refined bread, refined flour foods, here we have pasta, we have breads here, all of that turns into sugar. Versus we really want to start eating like this, where your non-starchy vegetables, your fruit, then you have a little bit your whole grains and starchy vegetables and legumes and your proteins and your healthy fats. And so how do we kick the habit? You know, now that you learn how to discern the sugars and what they do for your body, hopefully just having that knowledge will help you make better choices when you're grocery shopping and when you're just the snacks that you're choosing is, but the number one thing is start your day with high protein vegetables with little to no added sugars. The American breakfast is basically a sugar, it's sugar breakfast, right? Pancakes and syrup, waffles, cereal, I mean, the cereal industry is huge. My favorite cereal used to be Frosted Flakes, you know, and with the Tigers, Tony the Tiger saying they're great, you know, and I believe that as a child, but it's basically just refined corn dipped in some sort of sugar, not even cane sugar, some kind of sugar, and it's highly addictive. And then by the time I even got to school, I'd be hungry again. So then I'd be hangry because I you know, I couldn't eat anything until lunchtime. So, and that's the story of most people, even people who go to work. So we really need to cut out the sugar from our breakfast, and then we can start setting up our day for success. So starting your day with high protein and vegetables with little to no added sugar. So a couple of eggs, you can make egg muffins and have them, you know, ready to go. You could make yourself, you know, like a frittata or something, a tofu scramble if you don't do eggs. You could even have leftover dinner for breakfast, right? Dinner is usually savory, like the American dinner is usually like steak and potatoes or like grilled chicken or something. That should be our breakfast. And in a lot of cultures, and a lot of healthy cultures, and if you've heard of the Blue Zones, what they eat for breakfast is actually like fish or fermented rice cakes, you know, foods that have really high fiber, or even porridge that has not a lot of added sugar, but it's just so full of fiber and flavor. Those are really good ways to start breakfast and start your day. And if you start doing that consistently, you'll notice that you're not going to have that sugar craving, and you're going to be fuller for longer. You know, a lot of times when you have just a plain bagel for breakfast, within 2 hours you're hungry again, and then you're just and then you reach for the coffee or the protein bar or the M&Ms or whatever, just so you can make it to lunch. Introducing the other flavors, the American diet is again very heavy on sweet and salty, but we have bitter, astringent, sour. These are other flavors that we could find and add to our diet. So bitter foods like mostly vegetables, teas. This could be more spices, you know, sour foods like some like pickles and things. Adding more of that, we can start changing what our taste buds want. Removing easy access to sugary foods from your space. So again, like in addictions, like if someone's addicted to cocaine, you're just not going to have it laying around for them, right? Or even have any paraphernalia like needles and things. Like it's just not going to, like you wouldn't do that if you want someone to quit cocaine or a drug, right? same thing with sugar. You can't expect yourself, again, going back to that quote, if the cake is in the fridge, that is what you're going to think about. So you don't want to have any easy access to it. So you know, I invite you to go home and start getting rid of donating or even throwing out the really sugary foods. Like my thing about sugary foods is that I don't want to keep all these things in the home, but if I go out to a special meal, even if it's once a week to a restaurant and stuff, I will look at the dessert menu and I'll enjoy it because I'm not getting it at home and I'm not getting it every day, 3 times a day. So those moments become even more special and splurge worthy. Studies have actually have shown that people actually end up saving a lot more money when they stop buying, you know, like Chips Ahoy and all of like the pies and all of the things that's available at the grocery store, and then you actually end up having more money for healthier foods. That's another discussion too. You know, like the cost of healthy foods versus unhealthy foods, but that's a good place to start. Rethink office treats and make it a good effort, a group effort. You know, instead of celebrating everyone's birthday, maybe have a monthly birthday party or a quarterly birthday party, so you're not treated to cakes and donuts or whatever every week. For those office, you know, office meetings, those if you're doing in-person meetings, instead of offering cookies and donuts, you can have fresh fruits instead. And it takes a community to kick the habit. And if it's not available, then everyone, you know, it does take a mindset shift. So, you know, I think we should support each other. And if you're not, if your coworker is not on the same plan as you, same health plan, just you continue on. And it can take 21 days to start shifting your habits and setting it, making it a habit. But it can only take about a few, like 7 days maybe, to actually change your taste buds. So, you know, you go 7 days without any added sugars. On that 8th day, that sugar is going to taste so different to you. So sugar withdrawal is a real thing, just like, you know, you have alcohol withdrawal, nicotine withdrawal, caffeine withdrawal. Sugar withdrawal is really, it's real. So I don't also recommend going cold turkey because you could have headaches, especially if it's such a big part of your daily diet. So have a plan ahead. You know, instead of, you know, another way to think about it is what foods can you add into your diet versus removing it. And the more vegetables and fruits you're going to eat, the less hungry you're going to be for the sugary foods. And I don't recommend skipping meals, because once we skip meals, and then the next thing is we're going to be so hungry, we're going to eat everything on site, right? And then we really don't have that willpower then because we're just hungry. That's very human of us. Oh, we're almost out of time. Okay, so sugar cravings. So craving carbohydrates and sugars is a natural stress response. So another thing to ask ourselves every time we want to eat sugary foods, ask ourselves why. You know, look at it. Are we stressed about something? Is it emotionally driven? You know, where are we in our sleep? If, you know, sleep deprivation, just even a little bit, like 1 hour less of sleep in just one night, can cause us to eat want more carbohydrates and sweets. If our body is in pain, craving carbohydrates can be a response to low-grade chronic pain. So if you're, you know, addressing those issues can actually help you kick that sugar habit. And again, replacing your foods with protein and healthy fats and minerals are more satiating than quick fixes. Think nutrient density. Some healthy alternative snack ideas. So dark chocolate and berries. Again, choosing dark chocolate that's like 70% is darker, that has less sugar, less milk, and it's very high in antioxidants. Baked sweet potatoes with tahini sauce, fresh seasonal fruits, hard-boiled eggs with seasoning, smoothies. I don't recommend doing all fruit smoothie, but if you did like maybe some bananas and strawberries, adding in a little bit of spinach and some collagen or protein powder, that is a little bit better and more stabilizing for your glucose levels. Nut and seed butter sandwiches. That is, it's not the healthiest, but it's still so much better than a bowl of cereal. Having trail mix, fat bomb balls. You might have seen these. That's what these pictures are, where it's just like you in the food processor, you put a lot of nuts and seeds and dates, and no real sugar, but just like sweetened with dates or maybe even maple syrup, and then you roll them up into like meatballs, and then you could coat them in like cacao powder or seeds or coconut, and they look delicious and they're very satisfying. And then drinking teas, and if you get a craving, maybe doing something you love instead, like going for a walk or stretching your body or dancing a little bit, listening to your favorite song, and that can help abate that craving a little bit. So I'm going to end here because I want to leave room for a lot of questions. This is how you can find me. One thing I didn't mention was that actually you can use supplements to also help you come off of these cravings. A lot of times we crave sugar because we're mineral and vitamin deficient. So making sure vitamin D levels are good. Taking a magnesium supplement can actually help you kick the sugar craving. So especially menstruators, if you're menstruating or like, in that PMS stage, you're craving all this sugar. I have found that if they start taking magnesium and start meeting their magnesium deficiency, they don't actually crave chocolate and sweets as intensely. So those are just some things. So yeah, please ask me your questions.
Ray, you have a question? Unmute yourself. You're on mute right now.
Can you hear me now? Great. I used to use pasta. Now I use spiral zucchini or spiral carrots, and I toss it with a little olive oil, and I replace that instead of using actual pasta. But my question is, are plant-based foods high in sugar?
That's such a fantastic question. I love that you're doing the spiral, pastas with real vegetables. That's such a great substitute, especially if you're making your own sauces or paying attention to the sugars in the sauces. Plant-based foods, it depends. You have I'm assuming you're talking about these like meat substitutes and things. You got to read the nutrition label. I'm not a fan of meat substitutes because there are no actual real vegetables. There's not real food. It's a food that's being made in a laboratory in these food universities that have mega money, and they just want you to be addicted to their product. And then it's greenwashing, saying that it's good for the planet, it's good for this, when they're not actually really good for the planet because they require a lot of energy. Actually, so you have to be careful again of these labels and these diet trends. If you want to truly be plant-based, I think a real way to be plant-based is actually just eating whole real foods. The beans, you can make there was just an article the other day that said it's time to put the vegetables back into veggie burgers.
Right. Because I use what do they call it? The Beyond Burgers. That's what I was eating. And the Beyond sausage and all that kind of jazz.
Yeah. Well, so what you're doing is that you're just not yeah, just not just you, but what the population is just doing is that they're replacing real meat sausage that does, it could have some health benefits and it could not, with like a factory made fake meat sausage. You're not, that's what you're doing. You're not replacing, not, and I'm Ray, I'm saying you, not, I'm talking about the general population.
Yeah.
You're not replacing the sausage with spinach and avocados and beans, and so
Right.
there isn't a big health difference when you do that, and you're not doing a big difference for the planet when you do that.
Right.
And if you do have a health condition where it is recommended that you don't eat any meats and you get that craving and you're like, okay, once in a while I'm going to have this Beyond Burger, because burgers used to be real, beef burgers used to be my comfort food. And if you once in a while do the substitute, that's okay. But what I'm finding in my practice and as a nutritionist is that people are just eating these Beyond Burgers and Beyond Meats and Impossible Foods all day. And so they're not eating the real foods again, and that's not helping. That's definitely not helping the planet or your own health.
Because I feel bad for the animals. So I said, I don't want to do it anymore. So that's why I started eating these Beyond this and Beyond that,
Right. But a more sustainable and much cheaper way is to actually just eat vegetables and beans and make your own. You can make your own burgers. And honestly, you could, there's so many issues with the Beyond stuff, because, there are people who are raising animals in a sustainable way, the way they were meant to. Like, think about think about back in the day when our ancestors just let the animals roam around us, and they honored the animals, and the animals also had a purpose to feed the village. There are farms that are trying to adhere to that. It is so much healthier to eat those animals nutritionally also, because those animals are healthier. They're eating their natural food, so they're lower in calories, lower in saturated fat, higher in omega-3 fatty acids, have a lot more protein. So those are a lot healthier, and just eating those a couple of times a month versus a Beyond Burger, you're going to do so much better for agriculture, for the climate, for your own health.
How do you know if the animals are from a healthier environment, from a rain-free? How would you know?
Yeah. So you're going to have to basically really invest in searching. Like, you can't just blindly walk into a grocery store and it says grass fed and trust that label, like, I'm so blessed to live in California, in San Francisco, where like I can know the farmers and I can like literally drive by and see the happy cows, I see the happy cows, and I know that's where I'm going to get my meat from. Most of the country doesn't have that privilege, but you can order a lot of stuff using something called Thrive Market or butcher box, and get your meat shipped to you. And that's a lot of times cheaper, because you get that bigger discount price. So you could do that. I mean, this is such an important topic that you have brought up.
Okay, thank you. I'll do that.
I'm gonna pull up the link for Thrive Market, because I think that's such a great place to get groceries and things. Also,
Thrive Market. Okay, I got that. Okay.
In the chat box, I'm gonna put up the link. Okay, Thrive Market. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, I had a question. With my age and everything, I have what I call a trilogy. I have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diabetic. So for me, I have to read the nutritional facts and everything so I can make a better decision as far as the sodium content as far as the carbohydrates and stuff. But I want to ask is, they have the thing now where they have added sugar. They started putting that on. Is all added sugar processed sugar?
Yeah, because if they're adding it into the food, it wasn't naturally part of the food. So like a sweet potato, if you pick up a sweet potato at the grocery store, and then if it happens to have a nutrition label, it wouldn't have added sugar. It would just have sugar, part of that food naturally. But now if you pick up sweet potato chips and it has whatever sugar that's naturally derived from the sweet potato, and then it's going to have added sugar because they're adding something to make it sweeter. Or like, you know, coconut chips, you could get, you know, they have sweetened coconut chips. So coconuts in general, the coconut meat doesn't have a lot of sugar. So on the label, it'll say added sugar. So you want to avoid that. Yeah, and then the other thing with everything you just described, again, it's for you, it would be better to just stick to foods that you can make at home, like homemade, home cooked food versus the stuff that comes in packages. Because even if you get diabetic friendly freezer meals, it's going to have all this other fake stuff that has been proven to not really be beneficial. But working with a nutritionist can really, really help you for your specific health needs, as well as like taking in everything I mentioned today. I've worked with so many people who've been able to get off their cholesterol medication, who've able to, you know, actually reverse their diabetes, where they know they still had to be careful, but they no longer needed to be on such a high dosage of metformin. You know, and I think understanding your food and your own genetic body type can really help you reverse a lot of these conditions.
Well, at first, when I started out, my A1C was 12.2. Now I have it down to 5.9.
Wow,
Good.
that's amazing.
That's
Yeah,
great.
that's amazing.
I'm off of the metformin and stuff, but I don't think I'm going to be satisfied until I get it to 5.7. But I seem
Yeah,
to be stuck at 5.9.
yeah, that's amazing. So you're
That's
doing good.
great.
You're on the right path. Yeah,
That's
you're on the
great.
right path. Yeah, and then so for you, I wouldn't do sugar substitutes all the time, but if you were like, hey, it's my birthday coming up, then that's when I'd be like, try to make a cake with coconut sugar instead. Another cool trick is, I didn't mention that, is that if you know, like a lot of diabetics or people are just concerned about their sugar levels, they avoid like rice and potatoes. But if you cook the rice and cool it down or eat it the next day, the glycemic index has actually reduced by half and the resistant starch has gone up. So it doesn't impact your glucose levels as much, or your sugar. So eating actually leftover rice, leftover starchy food like potatoes, squashes is actually better. You know, and it changes the taste a little. Like fresh rice to me fresh rice tastes so different than leftover rice, but leftover rice has more health benefits. So there are things you can do with natural foods too that you may be afraid of eating, you know, because of their sugar content. Also cooking rice with a little bit of coconut oil and salt, and soaking the rice beforehand and rinsing out that water also removes a little bit of the starch.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's good.
Okay, so this is a really great talk. These are really, really great questions. If you need to reach out to me, I'll put my email here. Yeah, and I think we have another webinar coming up in later this month, maybe.
I'm gonna take a look.
Family, I think we have a family pantry one coming up.
Okay.
Yeah, but so I'll see everyone again in a few weeks. And reach out to me if you have any questions.
Thank you, Nimisha, and thank you everybody for attending. Don't forget to check
It was
out our
great.
calendar of events to make sure you don't miss out on any of our LYL events. Hope to see you soon,
Great.
and
Great,
have a
thank
great
you.
day, everybody.
Thank you
Thank
so much for
everyone.
inviting us. Thank you.
Thank
No
Yeah,
problem.
bye.
Great topic, great
Bye-bye.
topic.
Great topic.